Everything about the world and inquisitiveness is about having your eyes open. When you start looking, you start seeing. And when you start seeing, then you start being able to form an opinion. But there's no right and wrong. It's just as long as you have a defined feel for what it does look like. That's the key to it. But most of us have forgotten how to do it. When we went to look at this house, we turned into this gate and my wife started shaking, saying, I have to live here. I have to live here. This is the most beautiful, sort of unspoiled river valley, and it's sort of hidden away. On the hill which overlooks where we live, there was a vast temple. 6 miles away, there's another vast temple. Where we are, we're a mile from a Roman road. As such, you can then have discoveries like we discovered. A year ago, we had the builders into the house to put a shower in. 20 yards from our front door is a barn, and my son likes playing table tennis. While the builders were there, I said, would you put electric into this barn? So they dig a trench and they're going across, and suddenly there's a cry. Oh my God, we found something. And what has been revealed is this mosaic floor, which they call a guilloche. Okay, so it's like a basket weave. So we discovered this thing and clean it back, and you can see what it is. And I call Wiltshire County Council, their archaeological department, and say, look, I think we found something. I then send them a photograph, and they are there within 24 hours.
Luke had been putting lighting in an outbuilding, and the builders had chanced upon a mosaic. And so he dutifully rang up the county archaeologist, and Julie kind of gobsmacked when they got there and thought, this is wonderful, absolute 1,000,000 to 1 chance of just finding a mosaic by chance. I mean, it simply doesn't happen anymore. To just have a member of the public turn up and say, I found this mosaic, and for it to be such a high quality, wonderful, top-notch 4th century piece of workmanship is really rare.
What you can see from the field that this is in, and this is a 2-3 acre field, is you can see undulations in the actual landscape. And I think this sort of, the general guess would be that this was probably some sort of medieval building thing going on until you find a mosaic. When you find a mosaic, you know that this long predates anything medieval.
You could just tell by the setting of the property that there were going to be Roman remains here. It was this beautiful river valley, south-facing slope in an area where, although it's not had very much research done on it, we know there's very intense Roman activity because of all the metal detected finds from that valley. And so it wasn't really a great surprise that there should be something there, but what the surprise was the quality of what was there. The quality of the patterning on this mosaic, it's a swirling guilloche sort of knit mosaic, is fantastic and really top quality, equivalent to some of the greatest villas in Britain though. It's very, very similar to the elaborate showy pavement at Chedworth on the corridor, which is the kind of central feature piece of the rear range of the villa. When you went into the field, you could immediately see that the mosaic was under a gateway, and then behind that gateway, stretching off into the background, were some really substantial earthworks. From the geophysics we've later done, it turns out that these are essentially just the demolished or collapsed wings of the Roman villa. You could see it as you went through the gate, kind of laid out like a plan. 2 huge parallel broad banks with one perpendicular. It's very overt. It's almost violent in the landscape, the way it is put in without any sympathy to what's around it. The frustrating thing, of course, is that the mosaic is right under a gate leading to the modern buildings. Those modern buildings could be on top of who knows how much more villa.
Mid-late April, what is plotted is that they're going to do this exploratory excavation. They hit walls, they hit floors, and there was one fellow who's obviously as strong as an ox, but he was about sort of, let's say, 5'4". And like in no time at all, he had sort of disappeared, sort of deep down into this hole. This wall was getting higher and higher and higher around him. Sheep bones, cattle bones, and you could clearly see on the bones where the butcher's knife had cut it and carved it. David Roberts came just to have another look at the site, and in front of our kitchen window was this little stone trough. He kept coming back to this thing. He said, tell me about this. And I said, well, look, it was here when I bought the house. I said, but why are you so interested? He said, because that is a Roman child's coffin. There was pottery dotted everywhere, along with hundreds of oyster shells. But one of the most interesting trenches of all is what they call a robber trench. And what they found in this robber trench is at the bottom, it's like a Neolithic flint axe head. Then there's Bronze Age pottery, then there's Iron Age pottery, then there's Roman pottery. And you have, I don't know, what is that? 4,000 years of history, 5,000 years of history in that depth. I mean, it's ridiculous. 20 yards from your front door, when you design rugs, which are the mosaics of today, you find a 2,000-year-old luxury floor design. What is so arresting from our sort of slate grey skies and the monochrome colours that we generally wear is you arrive in India. You don't generally arrive in Jaipur, but you'll arrive in Delhi or Bombay or wherever. And it's the energy, and it's the colour, and it's the light, and it's the smell, and it's the inquisitiveness of people, and everything is to do with the senses. Whether it's the food, whether it's the colour of the clothes they wear, whether it's the henna-dyed hair, and it's an enjoyment of life and an embracement of life. And now I'm sort of fully diving into this idea of doing a mosaic collection. And so I go and see Vikram, and Vikram and I have worked in tandem, in partnership now for many, many years. And Vikram is kind of like, well, yeah, blah, 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 whatever. I said, but hang on one second, because I had the wit to bring one tesserae, which is, the tesserae is the cube, one of the cubes from the mosaic. And I said, open your hand, and I drop this tesserae into his hand. And it was like an electric shock. It was kind of like the tangibility of history hit him. Immediately we kind of rushed from his office into the design room, and can we do this, and can we do that, and let's do this, and let's do that. And suddenly it comes alive. There's been, let's say for the last 10 years, there's been this great sort of vogue in luxury rugs for this sort of distressed look. Because it's based, in essence, on ancient buildings, ancient mosaics, but with contemporary design, it needs to look a little bit distressed. This is part of the look of the entire thing. Oxidization works. Basically, they put a solution of iron oxide into the water that is washing the rug. And what happens is the iron oxide reacts with the wool, but does not react with the silk. So how this has been plotted in any area, in any one of these designs, where there's going to be a slight little patch of it's looking distressed, or around every single tesserae, so cube of the mosaic, it's plotted on the design graph that around every single one there is a thin one line of wool. So in the washing process, the wool disappears down to the warp and the weft, and the silk stands proud. Even with this very collaborative, creative process between Vikram and I, there is the verbal, and then there is the physical. And so you wait for this little package to arrive. And it is a bit like Christmas morning. It's sort of a moment of truth, but it gives you the stimulus to keep doing what you're doing. Because it's on so many levels. It's on cultural, it's on philosophical, it's on historical, it's on design. All of it is marrying. All of it is coming together. All of it, to me, is fascinating. I'm not convinced I have the conceit to think I've completed a circle. This is actually trying to make something alive again, and come to life again, and be relevant again, and be tangible again. But for our own time, not a replica of a time gone by.